Diego Lopes pulled it off with the big upset win against the last of the fighting nerds, Jean Silva. Silva was over a 2-1 favorite entering the octagon, and Diego Lopes pulled off the best spinning elbow I have ever seen. He hit Jean Silva with his move. Silva was throwing the spinning elbow the entire fight, as well as others, but he wasn't able to replicate the same result that Diego Lopes got with the first spinning elbow he threw. Diego Lopes doesn't throw strikes like that. Lopes is not really that much of an eccentric fighter. He is much more conventional. In this fight, he threw a spinning elbow out of nowhere, out of character as well. This is not a type of strike he usually throws. And it came after Jean Silva's multiple spinning elbow attempts, which all failed. Hitting Silva with his own move and executing it perfectly off the first attempt on the back foot, drawing his opponent in and countering the reckless left haymaker with the spinning elbow. That is so incredibly impressive. And because Jean Silva was throwing his entire body forward throughout the ending sequence, he ran himself into the elbow, magnifying the damage, and then Jean Silva pulled off a Paul Daly. He landed to the back of the head once it was over. Now, it doesn't seem to be stemming off of the loss, but more from Diego Lopes arguing with Silva's corner. So as you can see here, after the ending of the match, Lopes is talking to Silva's coaches, and he's saying something to them, he's pointing at them. One of Silva's coaches seemed to be slightly frustrated or flustered. He started talking back. Silva's watching them as the doctors are attending him. So that quarrel right there seemed to have been the reason as to why Silva punched him. Now, there's no excuse for that. You don't punch the other guy, especially behind the head. Could you imagine if Diego Lopes was closer and Silva fully corked the left hand in range for maximum power? Landing behind the head like that could be dangerous, so I wouldn't be surprised if he gets suspended for that. To be fair, Jean Silva had some really good moments throughout, but he soured that performance. Now, there were also shots to the back of Silva's head during the finishing sequence of ground and pound. From Lopes's flurry, he landed multiple shots behind the head. All fouls, but I believe unchanging to the outcome. Silva would have been finished regardless in my opinion. But now, moving into the technical part of the fight. Jean Silva was way too overconfident throughout this fight. He seemed to be the more technical striker, but the takedowns and the back takes seemed to have flustered him. The first time he got taken down was because he span with complacency, carelessly and slowly span for the back kick, and Diego followed the path to get the body lock around the back, taking him to the ground and instantly established the back take, which got turned into a full mount. Jean Silva was stuck under, helplessly, because notice the position that Diego Lopes took, scooted high up on the chest, becoming more resistant on hip bumps and bucking from Silva, allowing him to keep his balance on top. So Silva was hugging the body to try to close in as much necessary space as possible so Diego Lopes could not inflict enough damage with his elbows and punches. But with the introduction now of downward elbows, right, the 12-6 elbows, that defense does not become as effective anymore. Diego Lopes used this new rule intelligently, just thrusting downward elbows that created a few cuts, and Silva's escape consisted of rising up on one elbow, pushing at Lopes's chest to create space, so his body is bladed, perpendicular to Lopes's, and then naturally opens up more space between Lopes's legs, so he could throw in one of his arms, hooking under the left leg, and afterward in one motion, he rotates as hard as he can, pushing Lopes with that arm, and completes the reversal, standing up again. And as they stand up, Silva tries to play with Lopes's head. He opens both of his palms, but Lopes does not play into the tricks that many have done prior. Lopes focusedly walks forward with his hands up, not falling for Silva's mental traps. He understood Jean Silva's game, even before the first round began, where Silva had his hand open, an invitation to touch gloves. Lopes told him across the octagon, just one time, one glove touch and that's it, in which they met. Except they did glove touch in the second round as well. But then there was another moment as Silva attacked. Lopes kept his lead arm extended to hold Silva at the end of his reach. Now the fist was never open. The fingers never got into the eye of Silva. Silva walked into the fist, closed his eyes as if he got poked, and he started talking to Lopes. Now I don't know if he actually got bothered by that. I think he was playing mind games again, because he quickly opened his eyes, screaming at Lopes, started like emotionally smacking his chest, and then wanted another glove touch. Lopes never gave into it, knew not to play into these Jean Silva games. The guy's a trickster, dude. He's a very manipulative fighter, which usually works out to his benefit, but I guess not against a former title challenger, at this point a veteran, who has a much better understanding of Jean Silva's style. But the reason why Lopes does that is because Jean Silva uses those moments in the middle of the fight, where he wants to touch gloves, high-five the opponent, talk to them. He tends to cool down the intensity to then explode for a knockout against his unprepared opponent. He's done that multiple times throughout his career. The guy is like a psychopath. This guy was laughing from the first time he was taken down and then laughing in Lopes's face as he's eating elbows The guy's an absolute maniac, but Lopes never let any of it deter him. Just unwavering focus on the task at hand. And speaking of that extended lead hand, that was most of Diego Lopes's offense in the fight. He worked off a simple fundamental jab and used it constantly for feints as well as measurement. He spent half of the fight measuring with his lead hand, and that could have contributed to his measurement of the knockout, but it acted as a double-edged sword. With how present the jab was throughout, it both helped him measure for the spinning elbow, as well as acclimated Silva to the technique itself. So although the actual physical jab was getting countered heavily throughout, the benefits of using it were already harvested. The actual physical jab didn't matter anymore to Lopes. He got the distance down at that point. It seemed like a countering approach was the game plan, and everything else would orbit around that. Whether it's a takedown against a failed back kick, or it's throwing a counter right uppercut into a left hook as Silva is pushing forward, or it would be the spinning elbow against the recklessness of Jean Silva. It seemed like the main game plan was revolved around countering Jean Silva, and it worked perfectly. Now, from the beginning of the fight to the knockout, Silva was absolutely performing. Like, his loss is in the moment, but Jean Silva definitely proved to be a very dangerous and technical striker. He stunned the durable Lopes with a powerful combination, but that gradual, fiery progression ended up burning him. I honestly think that the successful adjustment to Lopes's prevalent jab, he kept it present the entire fight, as well as stunning Lopes before the spinning elbow, caused him to get reckless in that moment. After the first takedown, notice that Lopes wasn't really picking up the output. He wasn't pouring in more volume. It was almost as if he was waiting for the perfect moment. Silva was taking over the action after the first takedown. He was landing big shots, and Lopes wasn't really firing back as much as we thought he would. He got Jean Silva to be overzealous. Silva believed that he could just take over the entire fight from there and ran into the spinning elbow. But now moving to Silva's moments. Honestly, how quickly Silva was able to measure for the front kick was so impressive. The first time he reached for a double hand trap was enough for him to gauge the range for the front kick, so he steps away afterward and just whips his leg up, landing with the ball of his foot flush on the chin of Lopes. Of course, it has no impact on granite. Lopes's chin is something else. But I think a reason why Silva was targeting that specific technique was because of Lopes's habit of touching his own throat throughout a fight. He always raises his chin from that tick, which not only leaves an opening for a front kick, but it makes it difficult to see coming up from under the chin. I think that's one of the tactics that the fighting nerds developed, because normally a shorter fighter does not throw high front kicks at a taller fighter. The higher up it raises, the more drop off of power there is. So they were targeting that front kick based off of an opening that Lopes gives. You see Jean Silva take a quick step forward to bait out a response from Lopes. He's also leaning to his left, and that response is a right lean. But Silva doesn't attack. He didn't get an opening that he wanted, so he centers himself, throwing off Lopes's intercepting jab. He tried to land on the centering of Silva's stance with that jab, but Silva swiftly slips his head on the inside of the jab and explodes with an overhand over the shoulder, following up with a fight-ending left haymaker, which only grazes. The distance management from Lopes was definitely on point there. And also to mention, this is the same left haymaker that he threw when he got finished. So Lopes got a feeling of that punch beforehand. Very important to note. But the jab itself eventually got successfully adjusted to by Silva. Because of how recurrent that jab was, Silva concentrated on countering it as his main path to a knockout. Now, those counters are powerful shots, enough to at least score a knockdown, if not a knockout, but I guess they weren't enough for Lopes. As you can see in this moment here, Lopes throws a jab forward, and Silva slightly pulled on the punch. He's measuring the distance, and he continues to evade the jab. So he waits for the next one, knowing that Lopes is going to attack with another. And all Silva does is step out further to his left and slide his entire body on the inside, not just his head, his entire body, following behind a right straight that connects clean through the chin. That's a type of shot that should knock anybody out. But Lopes eats it, and eats another big shot. So in front of Lopes, Silva starts feinting with a left lean, overloading the hips, which creates a quote-unquote vulnerable target for Lopes's jab. But constantly, Silva's able to pull away just enough for it to fall short, and he blitzes forward with an overhand, getting his head on the inside of the jab once more. The overhand falls short, but it's to set up the follow-up left haymaker, again, the same punch he threw when he got finished. But this time, it lands flush. Lopes eats it and continues. So Lopes yet again feels the distance of that punch, even if he gets hit by it. Or in this moment, Silva's measuring distance in the southpaw stance and leans to his right to trigger out a response, and Lopes throws a half-committed jab, with Silva's reaction being leaning to the opposite side. So he was leaning to his right, now he's leaning to his left. But more importantly, he got Diego Lopes to also lean, overloading his hips, so he wants to center himself, and that's when Silva attacks with a strong left straight, using that outside step to line up the shot perfectly, and Lopes eats it. Or in this moment, Silva slides his entire body yet again on the inside of the jab, countering it with a tomahawk elbow. This is a rare strike in MMA, but Silva grazes with it as he strikes all the way downward. Or in this moment, he attacks with the 1-2 and successfully slips on the inside of the jab again, and his right straight bounces off behind the ear, and that seemingly hurts Diego Lopes. Or in this moment, Silva again is leaning to his left, getting into Lopes' space to pressure out an attack. He throws the jab, Silva slips on the inside of it, attempting to counter with the left uppercut, which misses, but he follows up with a strong right straight, landing it flush on the jaw, and yet Diego Lopes withstands it once again. And you also see Jean Silva countering that same jab with multiple spinning elbows. That was the way he was setting it up, so he waited or even baited out those jabs to set up a perfect spinning elbow counter. But all of them whiffed. Every single spinning elbow missed the target until Lopes threw it. So you see all these spinning elbows from Jean Silva failing, but he was successfully countering that jab. And then came to other moments where he was just bulldozing through the guard with his right overhand, ripping powerful left hooks to the body, but then getting countered by Diego Lopes' right uppercut and left hook, which seemed to be his main go-to counter throughout the fight, which makes sense against a shorter opponent. He usually prefers the overhand, but Silva's of a shorter stature compared to like Brian Ortega, for an example. And the moment Jean Silva rocked Diego Lopes was merely off a 1-2 combo without countering Lopes' jab. That was the most hurt I've ever seen Lopes in a fight, stumbling on his feet, and Jean Silva doesn't take advantage. It was another moment of overconfidence. He proceeded to taunt him by grabbing both of his gloves, stepping away and talking to him instead of furthering the damage to potentially secure the finish, and not get reckless the way he did in the finishing sequence. So, as you can see, Jean Silva was performing for most of the striking exchanges, but lost when it most mattered. I can't get over that spinning elbow, dude. It's the year of the spinning elbow. These fighters are advancing with this niche technique. Incredible, man. And honestly, the feeling leading up to the knockout was like an impending Silva finish, only for that to get suddenly flipped by one well-calculated spinning elbow. So, amazing performance by the former title challenger. Now, regarding the next title shot, Jean Silva has been momentarily eliminated from the discussion. That now leaves Lerone Murphy and Movsar Evloev as the only two reasonable title challengers. There's nobody else at the moment. I think Lopes will have to get another fight in order to get his rematch. So we'll see. One of these guys are going to fight Volk. Jean Silva, being the number 10 ranked fighter, is probably not going to drop many spots, if at all. And I think he should fight Brian or Ortega. So he's going to need some resting time, and so does Ortega. I think as they both return, they should be stepping across from each other in the octagon next. And as for Diego Lopes, we already know what the fight is. Yair Rodriguez. They cannot drop the ball again. Rodriguez should have been the one in there against Lopes. That's the fight we wanted to see, and it's still the fight we want to see. Him and Rodriguez definitely have beef. It will spell for a very interesting build-up and hopefully for a great fight. Honestly, I think stylistically it heavily favors Lopes, but we'll see. And I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown. If you guys did, make sure to give the video a like, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video.